Are you short on space, but you want to grow more food? Or maybe you're looking for a way to make your garden more productive, easier to manage, and maybe even a little more beautiful. In today's episode, we're talking about growing vegetables vertically, a simple method that can completely transform how you garden. Learn which crops are perfect for vertical gardening and why going up is a smart move, whether you're gardening in containers, raised beds, or an in-ground plot. We'll uncover some unexpected benefits too. It's not just to grow more food in less space, although that's a great benefit on its own. Let's dig in. Welcome back to Homegrown, your backyard garden podcast. I'm your host, Kathy Rogers from OakHillHomestead.com, where I help new gardeners grow their own healthy food and live a more self-reliant and resourceful life. Today we're diving into one of my favorite space-saving gardening methods, growing vegetables vertically. Whether you're growing on a patio, in raised beds, or in the ground, vertical gardening can help you grow more food in less space, and that's something we all want, right? We'll explore why vertical gardening works so well and which vegetables and fruits grow best this way. A trellis or other vertical support increases the space in your garden by encouraging your plants to grow up instead of out. So you're essentially adding square footage to your garden by using vertical real estate. This is especially helpful if you're gardening in a small area, whether it's in your city backyard or on a patio or on a balcony. It's the easiest and quickest way to add more space to your garden. But even if you have plenty of room, vertical gardening still comes with some big benefits. First, yes, you can plant so many more plants in the same space when you grow some of them vertically. This is a big benefit when you have limited garden space. Grow your tall, vining plants along one side of a raised bed on a trellis, and suddenly you have room on the ground next to them to plant smaller plants like lettuce, root crops, and herbs. Sunlight exposure is improved when plants aren't shading each other, which helps them to grow stronger and healthier. If the smaller plants need full sunlight, of course you need to plant them so they're not in the shadows of the taller plants. But those smaller plants won't shade the taller plants, so there's plenty of sunlight to go around. Growing upwards means better air circulation around your plants and a lower risk of diseases like powdery mildew and blight, which thrive in damp, crowded spaces. Keeping fruits like tomatoes, cucumbers, and melons up off the ground helps prevent rot, pest damage, and spots caused by sitting on damp soil. Maintaining your garden is also much easier when you're growing those monster plants vertically. Vertical gardens are easier to reach for watering, fertilizing, and pruning. And honestly, harvesting is so much easier when your vegetables are hanging in front of you. No more hidden fruits under a pile of leaves or vines that are tangled on the ground. Especially cucumbers. Those things multiply like rabbits in my garden, and they're so much the same color as the leaves that I have trouble spotting them until they're too big. Growing them vertically really helps me see the developing cucumbers and keep on top of harvesting them. Growing vertically can also help maximize your yield. Some plants, like pole beans, can produce significantly more when grown vertically compared to the yield from bush beans. You'll also have reduced pest issues when you grow vertically. Better air circulation and less contact with the ground can help minimize pest problems, and it makes pests easier to spot if you do have a problem. Damage to tomato plants from hornworms is easy to spot by checking the tops of the plants that are growing on a trellis. And even though hornworms are hard to spot on the plants, it's easier to find them if the plants are growing upright. And by the way, you can buy a cheap blacklight flashlight online and shine it on your plants at night to find the hornworms because they glow in the dark. Vertical gardens can also add beauty to a garden and even transform less appealing spaces. Now let's talk about the vegetables and fruits that are ideal for vertical growing. Here's a list to get you thinking and planning. Tomatoes, especially the indeterminate varieties, which keep growing taller and producing all season long. By the end of summer, my tomato plants are taller than I am and are rather out of control, even though they're on a trellis. Can you imagine what they'd be like if they were sprawled on the ground? Cucumber plants climb easily with just a little guidance and produce nice straight fruits when trellised. And as I said, they are much easier to spot. Pole beans and peas are born to climb, and they'll happily cover a trellis or a fence. You really don't even have to train those. Small melons like cantaloupe, yes, even melons. You may need to use slings to support the growing fruit, but growing them on a trellis keeps them cleaner and reduces rot. Vining squash like butternut, acorn, delicata, pattypan, and summer squash can all grow vertically. Some of them need a more sturdy structure, but they can absolutely grow upwards. Even smaller pumpkin varieties, like sugar pie pumpkins, can be trellised too, with good support. Depending on what you're growing, you'll need to choose the right kind of support system. Here are some options. Trellises, either homemade, purchased, or repurposed, are great for peas, beans, cucumbers, and more. Make sure whatever you use is sturdy enough to support the weight of the mature plant and its fruit, especially for heavier crops like melon and squash. Tomato cages that are sold in garden centers, in my experience, these are better used for plants that are more lightweight than tomatoes. Those indeterminate tomato plants that continue to grow and grow all season long are just too heavy for these tomato cages to handle. Use them instead for pepper plants, eggplants, and even zucchini to keep these plants from falling over. They aren't vining plants, but keeping them upright keeps them contained and keeps their fruit off the ground. Use something stronger for the heavy plants like tomatoes. You can make stronger supports for heavy plants by forming heavy-duty wire fencing into circles and securing the ends with wire ties. Be sure to cut holes in the fencing that are wide enough for your hand, plus a ripe vegetable, so that you can harvest easily. However, these handmade cages can be hard to store over the winter, unless you take them apart and store them flat. Heavy-duty wire cattle panels are perfect for those heavier crops, like squash and melons. Cattle panels are sold at farm supply stores, feed stores, and at some hardware stores. They come in 16-foot lengths and, at least at the bigger stores, are available in various gauges. In other words, some panels are made with heavier gauge wire, making them sturdier and better suited for their original purpose, which is fencing for large livestock. And if you're into the details, the lower the gauge number is, the thicker and sturdier the wire is. For example, 4-gauge is much thicker than 12-gauge wire. Cattle panels can be cut into shorter lengths with a rotary cutter or bolt cutters if needed. To install a cattle panel trellis, drive a T-post into the ground at each end of the panel and secure the cattle panel with wire ties for a strong, upright structure. They're my favorite trellis for tomato plants. And if you're growing on a balcony, simply stand the cattle panel against the rail or the fence. Arches and tunnels are beautiful and functional. You can grow cucumbers or tomatoes or cantaloupe on both sides of an arch and walk underneath them to harvest. We used a 16-foot cattle panel to build our arch between two raised beds. The ends of the panel are attached to the sides of the beds with heavy-duty fencing staples. It's very sturdy and visually pleasing, and it withstood a tornado a few years ago. Teepees or A-frames are easy to build from wood or branches and perfect for pole beans or compact squash varieties. I've also used 2 shorter pieces of cattle panels or wire fencing to build A-frame trellises. Just keep these few things in mind for success when you're growing vertically. Train your plants early. Start guiding them onto the support when they're young and flexible. Tie them gently to the supports if needed. Secure heavy fruits with soft cloth slings or mesh bags to prevent the vines from breaking under their weight. Water your plants at the base. Vertical growing can expose plants to more wind and sun, so monitor the moisture levels and use mulch to retain moisture. Don't water the leaves of your plants. It's the roots that need water. Keeping the leaves dry will also help combat blight and fungus issues. And if you're in a windy area, consider positioning your trellises where they won't topple or damage other plants if the wind kicks up. You might even determine which way your wind usually blows and build your trellis accordingly, so it won't blow over in a strong wind in the middle of the night. Don't ask me how I figured that out. Once my tomato plants got that big and heavy, they acted like a sail on a boat, and there was no keeping that trellis upright for the rest of the summer. There are some extra surprising benefits of growing vegetables vertically, things that you may not have thought of. You know how some plants don't like full sun and summer heat? Lettuce comes to mind, although any cool season plant can benefit from this trick. Lettuce plants will bolt when the weather gets too hot. It begins to grow a stalk and it goes to seed. Well, if you're growing other plants vertically, you can strategically plant your lettuce and other cool weather crops in the shade of the vertical plants, which will keep the soil cooler and allow you to grow those spring crops for a bit longer, because they're in the shade. Using vertical crops to grow microclimates like this is a smart strategy and can help extend your growing season. Trellised crops can also create windbreaks and will protect more delicate plants that are growing nearby from the wind. You'll even have fewer weeds. When plants are grown up instead of sprawling along the ground, it's easier to spot weeds popping up, and you can pull them when they're little. Growing vertically also saves your back and your knees. Harvesting, pruning, and checking for pests is easier and more ergonomic when fruits and vines are at waist level or even eye level, less bending, squatting, and crawling around in the dirt. Better airflow also helps your plants to dry out after the rain. Because vertical crops dry faster after a rainstorm, there's less opportunity for fungal diseases to take hold. You'll also improve pollination. Flowers are more visible and accessible to pollinators like bees and butterflies when they're off the ground. Vertical gardening keeps your garden neater and more organized and adds structure to your space. Trellises can help divide garden beds, define walkways, or even act as a living privacy screen. A well-designed vertical garden is not only productive, it's visually stunning. Imagine walking under an arch covered in beans or cucumbers, or seeing bright yellow squash flowers climb up a trellis. It brings beauty and function together. Vertical gardening is one of the easiest ways to maximize your harvest, especially if you're working with limited space. Whether you're a beginner or you just want to get more from the garden space you already have, vertical gardening is a smart and simple way to grow more food in less space. Why not give it a try this summer? Thank you for hanging out in the garden with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, would you do me a quick favor? Hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you're listening so you don't miss any future episodes. And if this podcast has been helpful or encouraging, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a quick rating and review. Your kind words help more gardeners find the show. And that means we're growing this community of resourceful, homegrown folks just like you. I'll see you here next time on Homegrown, your backyard garden podcast.